So I'll call the meeting to order, and with Rick here with us, I think we can start with Squires Pond Lane. So we won't keep him on the whole time.
Oh, this is a pleasure, Jim. another Zoom meeting.
Yeah. At any rate, so I think everybody on the call knows we've discussed Squires Pond before, but I think there was more recent information that we shared with Realtor and everything on this. And I thought I saw John Aprea with us as well at one point. But
it looks like Jonathan and John are on at the bottom, Jim. I did have the opportunity to talk to Jonathan today, and he said maybe John would be on as well. Appears like they're on the bottom of the screen.
Okay, good. At any rate, we had the Water Commission had discussed this issue, and following the discussion that I had with John Aprea on this, and we came up with a plan that to provide that we could provide water to Squires Pond Lane or to the first house there on the left, if with and a 2-inch main would be satisfactory to do that. Since there's only 4 or 5 properties on that residential properties on the lane.
If I may, Jim, I looked at the same thing, running a civil and mechanical design firm. Over the years, over the last 35 years, we've done a number of projects with RH White. Our office is main office in Connecticut is actually just over the Connecticut line from those guys. If you run out, which John already probably did, water supply fixture units and velocity considerations, there are currently 4 dwellings on that road with another lot that may be developable, but if one looks at wetlands, perhaps not. The end of that clearly goes into Squires Pond. And we run a fair amount of water lines for commercial development. And one of the issues we constantly run into is if you need to run a relatively substantial water main for commercial development along a secondary road, that kind of precludes anybody on that road from going to the health department if they have a failing well and getting another well permit. And oftentimes when people on that road look at at least in Connecticut, with Connecticut water, what the service tie-in fees are and what it costs them to get water to their dwelling, they can't resist, but sometimes it's doing everybody along that road somewhat of a disservice. And that's why I had mentioned to Rebecca of perhaps bringing a 2-inch water line down. Just, if I'm working with Connecticut Water, I believe the requirement is at least 20 feet past the front edge of the property line. And that would not, quite frankly, would not disadvantage anybody else on that road of potentially acquiring a replacement well if in fact they thought that was better or more economical. And I also mentioned to Rebecca, perhaps, doing the design on that or working with Whitewater on the design on that. We're capable in-house enough to at least get it out, meet the standards and get it out to be bid. And as I mentioned to Rebecca, I'm willing to pick up the tab for that line, including the tap and curb box onto the property line, whatever I need for riser clamps and thrust blocks to allow you folks to tie back in to the end of that if you wanted to continue it down the road, and even do a fire department connection because of the velocity, perhaps at the dwelling, maybe run 2-inch all the way over for bleeding and decontamination, if Whitewater feels that's applicable, Jim.
Yeah, well, I mean, what we had initially discussed, John Aprea and I had on this, was a 2-inch down to the end of that 15 Squires Pond Lane in front of it, with a curb stop there, and at the owner's or the potential owner's expense for that. Then if other owners on the lane are interested, they would have to pick up the cost for extending it down. The entire length down the lane, I believe is around 360 feet.
Correct. I saw the same thing. I was proposing maybe 120, 140. We just want to make sure we got a curb stop near where the expansion curb stop, Jim. We don't want to have more than, I think it's 5 feet of dead after the end of the curb stop that's going to be going on to the 15 Squires Pond Lane property. But I'm certainly amenable to whatever John and you feel is best.
Well, I would want to leave that up to, normally what we've done in the past with this, it's gone through, Whitewater has not done the design on it. I don't know, Eric, if that's something that you folks would normally do or not.
Yeah, I don't think we'd be really in a position from the design standpoint to really do it. Be able to consult and advise would be the best position, but not specifically the design piece.
Although, in all honesty, Eric, this is really not much more than a typical commercial service connection being 2-inch. It's really not a whole lot different with a water supply fixture units than running a 2-inch typical service connection to a shopping plaza or an apartment house or something. From a design perspective, whatever we could spec, or working with the town standards as to what you typically have for a wet tap, we could propose a water line material, the thrust blocks, the curb stop, and the expansion capabilities at the end. If that would be acceptable or permittable. It's pretty simple. It's not like we're running a water main with any other potential expansion onto this, guys.
Right. Well, I mean, I don't know that RB Hour would be in a position either to do the specifications on it.
I mean, we could specify here in our house, we're PEs and have somebody potentially review it, or if we needed to go out to a third-party house, Jim, I'd be happy to work with somebody on that also.
Well, I think what we would ask would be that if you're going to do the design yourselves, then that Whitewater would just have the opportunity to review that to ensure
Absolutely.
that it's
Yes, we're on board for that.
Rick, who would potentially be, who would you normally have, or who would you think of having doing the work?
Probably Hour. Those would be the primary folks to go to, I think.
Yeah, so I mean, if you're gonna have Howard do it anyway, I think didn't they do the design work, Jim, for the Cumberland Farms?
No, Coastal Engineering did that.
So, because I'm just trying to think what we would have to have in the design legally.
We're not putting in a hydrant there because I believe the valve is all that's required. That wherever the line ends, there needs to be a bleeder valve.
Right, but the the as-built drawing and all that kind of stuff in terms of location, in terms of somebody's got to locate that. I guess Rick could. You know what I'm driving at, because we've got to have a proper as-built and all that kind of thing.
Sure. I mean, if either Hour would bring their surveyor in, or I could bring an LS in, Kurt, if it made more sense. It's really a matter of, what Hour would typically use for a wet tap, incorporation, what we're going to use for material, what we're going to use for stop at the end for expansion, and what I'm going to use for curb box onto the, and stop on the property line. Said it's a pretty, from our perspective, typically do an entire, water design. This is a pretty typical commercial service connection, more so than designing Eastham's water system or Plainfield's water system like we've done up here.
Yeah, I think that the engineering spec, I don't think is a problem. My concern was just the survey work so that we have, correct
We have-
drawings.
Right, right.
Do you know if there is a water tap on the Squire Pond Lane at the intersection of Main Street? Is there a tap there in the Main Street?
I have not looked at that.
I don't believe so. Just doing a field site recon. There's a multitude of stops up there, but they go to, looks like the dwellings on Main Street. One goes to a hydrant, a live hydrant. You've got that standpipe coming up from dry standpipe from Squire Pond, probably for fire protection. There also seems to be one at the intersection of School Street, but that doesn't seem to make any sense at all. So whoever's got the as-built, the detailed
So,
as-built drawings would behoove them to look at that, or perhaps even share those with us if you have them, Eric, or
We-
somebody else, in your office.
We have them in the water office, Rick.
Okay,
We should have a copy of that.
We have it, Neil. The School Street is the connection for the water where the water goes down School Street. It's the connection for the water tower. So that's
okay, gotcha.
very mains in the system.
Right, that makes sense then, Jim.
Yeah.
You feed from two directions onto Main, you feed from school and from the southerly part of Maine as well? With the tower coming in off of school?
Yeah, it comes in on school next there on Main, and it goes in both directions on Main. It goes toward east, toward Route 6, and then also continues down Main Street there to the center of town.
But is the service coming in from the tower on School Street and then it goes in two directions on Main from there? Or is there another service connection coming in from another direction? I couldn't figure that out, Jim.
The flow comes from, let's say, the Boy Scout camp is the primary feed for the water tower, which would come down from the east side there of Route 6, across Route 6 and in on Main Street, and then branch off and go up School Street to the water tower.
Gotcha, okay. That makes more sense. Hence the stop on the junction of Main and School.
Correct.
Right. I didn't see any of the at least stops that were open and notorious on Main Street, but it did look like there was an area between stops really on the, I guess that would be the westerly side of Squire, that looked like it'd be pretty easy to get a box in and do a wet tap there.
So I don't know. I would say, Rick, if you want to have your folks we can provide you with the drawings of what's existing there on Main School, that area. And if you then want to take it from there and do the plan, basically,
Yeah,
for the installation, then we would just then ask Whitewater to review that.
is there a preference, guys, or a standard, Eric, on materials for like your typical service connection? You can't get C900 less than 4-inch. I don't think you can get CL52 DI and under 4. Most of the time, the service connections that I've done in the past, I've used like a DR9, poly, 250-pound poly tubing. You have a preference on that when I put a plan together, or is that something I need to check with Coastal on? Or just spec something that's going to be applicable, Eric?
John, I don't know if you want to speak to that piece and what we've done in the past. I'm not 100% sure on that.
I believe what you're talking about is the, would you say 250 PSI?
Yeah, the
Black
DR9,
plastic comes in a roll.
yeah, the DR9, 250-pound, I think it's CTS, potable water tubing.
Yeah.
Yeah, DR9 is pretty thick stuff, John. We've used
That-
that in the past for water service connections.
We use that for all 2-inch, that, you know, in other places, not down there. but
John, is that what we have out on the Coles Neck area, the polyethylene?
Yeah, I don't think it's as good as what we're
Yeah,
talking
it's not
about
as good
right
as
now.
this.
It's old stuff. Right
Yeah.
now, he's
This-
talking about up to date. What he wants to use is perfect.
Yeah, the ultra blue CTS tubing. Again, it's DR9, 250 PSI. I said that I think that's kind of the Cadillac of 2-inch service main tubing, John. Unless you get something else, and it changes like it seemed like it was just yesterday. I'm getting to be the old guy. CL52 is the only game in town, and now AWWA wants everybody to use C900. The DR25 C900. We just did another water service, and that's what the state of Connecticut had wanted us to use. But I'm certainly amenable. I just want to make sure I put the right stuff on the plans, guys. That's all.
Well, we can get copies of the existing drawings for Main Street, School Street, that area for you.
That would be great, Jim. And then I'll take and use the GIS mapping and bring that down Squire with the applicable connections and inspect the tubing. Get that out to either John or to Eric, and I'll get it out to Our as well to take a look at. And certainly with those guys being bonded, whether they got to pave and then mill and then repave 6 months later, we're used to doing, that type of work. So I can work with those folks to get that done. And I'd like to also give a little bit of thought, if you could, guys, to how far you'd like us to go down. The house is pretty much in the middle of the property. Certainly, if wherever we put the tap in, we don't want to have an awful lot of dead space on the backside of that. I think AWWA, Eric, only allows 5 feet of dead, past your last stop or past your last bleed off. And then if you prefer from a velocity and a clean out standpoint, if I'm buying the poly tube and it takes nothing to bring the 2-inch, after the stop to the house as well. And if need be, put a fire department connection on the outside of it that one could put a 2-inch hose on. If in fact you want to do a full port, flushing from time to time, considering there's only going to be one customer on there and the velocities will be somewhat lower. We can add the chlorination port up at the top that we typically do as well, and kind of do it like a typical service connection, guys, and let you review it.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I mean,
Well,
I'm not an expert, but my only concern would be that, as you mentioned, Rick, because there's such limited flow there, and that whole leg is downhill.
Right,
So that could be a sediment trap. So you probably want some flushing down there.
sure. And you want to get some velocity up too to make sure your potable water stays good.
Right. As far as the length, I mean, I know you're doing the work, but something in my gut saying that the right thing to do is to probably run that to the end of the road.
The road or the end of the property, Kurt?
Yeah, I'm thinking that's why I'm struggling with this. It looks, I'm thinking that the sensible thing would be to run to the end of the road. So
I don't think, but that puts everybody else in that road at a disadvantage. If they can't go back to the health department, there's 4 other dwellings on there. I kind of like the idea that Jim said, if I was doing this for Connecticut Water, would be required to run it at least 20 feet past the near edge of the property line, do the tap within 5 feet of the end. And if in fact somebody else wanted to tie in down the road and bear the expense, then they could so choose to do that like I'm offering. And if they don't, then they don't have potable water going past their house, and they could go to the health department and get a replacement well permit that may be much less costly to them down the road. It doesn't, quite frankly, it doesn't put everybody else at a disadvantage if in fact they have, wells that are working now, Kurt. And there's only, everybody else is tied in. There's only 3 other houses, past that 15, on that road.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. My concern would be, how would you, if somebody else wanted to tap into that, how would they do that? So if they wanted to extend it.
They put a stop right at the end, Kurt. And all they do, we already got a stop. They actually screw a fitting to the back side of the stop and just continue the run down the hill.
Okay, that makes sense. That's fine. I just
so
want
you
to
know,
be,
I did have a discussion with Richard Robichaux about this last week. He's one of the property owners on the opposite side of the street. And he's not certain whether or not his wife is actually the owner on the property, as to whether or not she wants to incur the expense of such a hookup. But just so anybody who chooses to hook up, if that line did run down to the end of the lane, the current connection fee for any of those properties that would be payable to the town then would be $6,000 per residence.
And then, Jim, then they have to do the connection inside the house. They're gonna spend another I explained that to Rich this past weekend as well. He's thinking, yeah, the town's gonna run it down. I'm gonna hook in. I said, it's probably gonna cost you 20 grand. He's like, what? He said, I can put a well in for less than that. I said, yeah, you're right there. And we run into this frequently up this way where once you run it down a public road, the health department won't give you a replacement well permit and you're somewhat disadvantaged. But that's up to you guys. I'm willing to work with everybody down there. The other piece, Jim, would be the last house on that road is Rich's house. And the balance of the land is actually contiguous to the property that's fed off of School Street. So it may not even require, it may require bringing that line if in fact Rich wanted to be tied in only to his house. I think the ministry house across the street is actually closer to Maine from a tie-in standpoint than Rich Robichaux's.
That one, the Methodist Church rectory there, or parish house, is it's the address is Squires Pond Lane, but they're on a well.
I think Rich's place is actually a little further down Squires Pond than even the ministry house, Jim. I may be wrong.
And there's actually, the Methodist Church owns 2 lots on the same side as 15 Squires Pond Lane.
Right, they own one with a dwelling on it and then the one between 15 in the parish house. That looks like it's a lot of record, but if you walk through there, there may be more wetlands on there that allows one to build, but I'm not
I
sure.
don't think there's any wetlands on that property.
Gotcha, it's further down.
Yeah, further down, yeah.
Right.
Have we had any communication from the people that live on that street?
The only
send out a flyer or something?
The only person that I've spoken to was Richard Robichaux.
And I did as well, Jim. Rich and I had a nice chat last Saturday.
Would be wise to contact them because that could influence our decision. But it may make more sense to follow a person. Somebody down there is interested.
Well,
isn't anybody? Well, then we stop it.
I think the concern is that if the line runs only to 15, then the town has no obligation to pay for installation beyond that. It would be up property owners to cover the cost of that installation if they choose to so do that. However, I mean, they may not have a choice. If they have an issue with siting a septic system and getting a well on the same property, that may be difficult.
Yes, but we haven't had any communications with them.
You're fading out, Tom.
We have not had any communications with any of those people.
No, we have not. other than that one.
So they would know they had the opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with Tom. I think at a minimum, we should let them know. I mean, if they, when the road's being open to run the line, we would want to know whether they're willing to pay for the additional extension or not. I agree with you, Jim. I don't think we want to run it further at the town's expense, but you know, there is an opportunity for those folks to either choose to connect or not connect. And
as we've done in the past
Yeah.
with other properties that we've allowed to an offset against the connection fee for any
Right.
cost associated with installation of the main.
right. So Rick, basically what we're saying is if those folks were willing to connect and interested, and they're willing to, they may help defray the costs for you as well. I think it may be, you know, at the end of the day, it may be less for everybody if there's some more participants, but, you know, they at least get to say yes or no, and we've notified them. You know, I wouldn't feel it'd be the right thing to do to not notify them of something like this.
So, Rick, I posed a question, maybe you can't answer this. What is your estimate of what the cost would be associated with running it fully down the lane, the 360 feet?
In all honesty, Jim, I mean, if we were doing it with our own forces, it would be somewhere in the $55,000 range if
Yeah,
we were doing it.
Yeah.
If in fact it was done by a more expensive heavy and highway water guy, it would probably be closer to the $90,000 to $100,000 range, Jim. I'm estimating 120.
Yes. Okay, well, I'll ask Rebecca to put you to connect you again, okay?
Rebecca, you do it all, huh?
Well, we're all still here.
I certainly do.
And look good, all in one package, incredible.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll have to try again, okay? All right, otherwise, just, you can dial in just for the phone. Neil's not able to, he got disconnected and he's trying to get back on.
I'm not seeing him in the waiting room. Does he want me to resend him the link?
Yes, please.
Okay, hold tight.
She's going to resend you the link, Neil.
Jim, I'm estimating between $150 and $300 a foot with a wet tap, curb stops. I know that's a big range, but the high end with some blasting and some remilling of the road up this way and some rocks, it's typically closer to $250 to $300. Down your way, digging in sand with a DR9 line and maybe closer to the $150. So with that being said, I was estimating that, the 120 or so feet to get to 20 feet past the close to the middle of the 15 Squire Pond Road to be between 20 and 35. Typically running it further down the road, you amortize the cost of that stop out. It may go down per linear foot a little bit, but you guys know how that plays out.
Yeah. Well, I estimated or came up with an estimate close to what your initial number that you had mentioned was,
To go all the way down to go 300 feet?
350 feet, At any rate, I think, we can reach out to the other property owners on the lane. We can send out a letter, but whether or not we get a response, that's, we won't. What's your time frame here? What are you looking to do?
If I could, I'd start tomorrow.
Yeah.
I'm one of these guys that doesn't typically sit around. I'm going to close on that property tomorrow morning. The dumpster's getting there tomorrow. If you approve this tonight, I can get the 4-bedroom septic into the health department so I can start that ball rolling. I don't know what Robert B. Hour's time frame looks like. I'll I'll put a couple engineers on it with myself and get a plan out to you folks. You know, I typically like to do stuff, you know, out our way. As I used to joke before anybody wakes up, and now nobody's going to sleep this winter, it seems like, but I typically like to get infrastructure work done when there's not a lot of traffic on Main Street, not a lot of folks kicking around in the summertime, that everybody can enjoy the 10 or 12 weeks of summer and, you know, get back at it. But quite frankly, Jim, I'd like to get it done as expeditiously, you know, as I can. And I can't tell how much I appreciate Rebecca's time and her candidness and her knowledge and how pleasant she is, and the fact that I was added to the agenda this afternoon, guys. Greatly appreciated.
So,
Yeah, I was just gonna say, Jim, you know, I think our obligation would just be to notify those folks. So Rick, if you have you know, a time frame in mind, we would put that in the letter and say, you know, a proposal has been brought to the water board to extend the water line down the road. Right now, the estimated construction schedule would look like X. If you're interested in connecting, it would be at your expense, and please let the water board know.
I think we'd have to make it clear, though, Kurt, that the extension here is just to take it to that first property on the left. If other properties are interested, they would have to agree to cover the cost for that.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was saying. Yep, exactly that.
The other piece of
and then we've at least notified them so that, you know, we've given them a deadline, we've given them a notification. I just think that's the right thing to do.
The other piece in that correspondence, Kurt, if you may, is to let folks know that it's not only the cost of the water line and the curb stop, but it's also the additional cost of excavation and bringing that water line into their dwelling and having their inside plumber hook that up. Many people think they're gonna spend, it's a deal, give you guys $6,000 to get your water down there, and then find out it costs them another 15 to get it to the house.
Right.
A lot of people forget that. They just haven't been through this for a couple of times in a couple of weeks. I think that's good knowledge. Not to defray those, but at least so people understand, Kurt and Jim.
Agreed. So, do we need to, we still have a quorum here. We need to take a vote on whether or not we would go ahead to allow them to do the design on this, have it reviewed by Whitewater, and then
We're
defer.
overhearing a telephone call somehow.
Pardon?
That's me. I'll be.
Okay.
What's that?
What?
The green telephone in the center of the screen.
I don't know.
Don't you have it?
No.
Mine's gray, Catherine.
Yeah, now that you're back. Yeah.
It's on mine, and we're getting live feed on one of the squares here.
Okay.
I don't know what it is.
So, do we want to make a motion to approve this plan?
Well, what is
Yeah, I could make a motion.
Go ahead.
I would move that we approve Rick's proposed extension of the water main down Squires Lane, dependent upon and contingent upon review by Whitewater to look at the design, that it conforms with the town specifications, and that the abutters be notified of both costs for their possible connection and that they have the ability at this time and a construction schedule timeframe.
That's pretty complex, to say the least.
Yes, but, well, you're.
But-
Well, we can leave out the details of contacting
You're fading
Can't
out.
hear you.
And leave out all the details on contacting the neighbors, just say to contact them, and we would know our internal contact of what it would be, the letter. Just to keep the emotions in.
His audio connection fails.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, Neil, we can.
I'm just calling in on the phone number.
Okay. So
Oh,
what-
okay.
So we have a motion by Kurt that we would approve a plan that Rick could provide a plan for bringing the 2-inch line down Squires Pond Lane to at least to the front of the property at 15 Squires Pond Lane at their expense, which could be offset by the connection fee. We will notify abutters of this potential, the plan to install this line, if they would like to also join in on that. Is that
Well,
it?
Yeah.
I'll
I mean-
second.
Well, we've really been dealing with this for quite a while. I think it'd be nice to resolve things.
Right, well, that's what we're trying to do right now.
Yeah.
Kurt, was that okay?
Yeah, that is it.
And
Okay.
So you can take a vote on this. Neil,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes,
Kathy said yes.
Yes, yeah.
Kurt,
Yes.
and I agree. So it's unanimous that we would go ahead with it. Rick, I would ask that you notify the Board of Health here of what you said you have to get to them about the septic plan, correct?
Yes, I needed to get your approval, Jim, to be able to bring, town potable water to the property. To allow the health department to start reviewing the septic. And now they're only doing a septic and not doing a septic/well plan.
Okay. All right, and so you can let Hillary know that we have approved this plan.
Rick, the other thing, just FYI, I don't know, but you may want to ask Hillary if as a result of bringing water, it would allow you any additional bedrooms.
Yes, it actually will, Kurt. With public water, I can easily get a 4-bedroom septic in that place. There's actually 4 bedrooms in there now. So that would work very well, and it's certainly greatly appreciated.
Terrific. Well, congratulations.
Well, thank you, guys. Thanks so much for being so cooperative. I'm look forward to working with Jonathan and John from RH White or Whitewater, and keep everybody in the loop, and whatever we need to do to get that paid for, and if need be deeded to you folks or as built it or otherwise. We're pretty used to doing this, and I look forward to working with you.
And we can get you a copy of the existing drawings for the Main Street / School Street and Squires Pond area here.
That'd be very helpful. I believe the lovely Rebecca has my email address, Jim. You can either do it in the Dropbox or whatever works best. We're a design firm, so we're used to looking at those.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you, Rick, for joining us.
Thank you. Thank everybody on the board. Thank Rebecca for being so forthcoming and so polite, and I certainly look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Yeah,
Good luck.
yeah. Good luck with the COVID pieces too. You're better off with a
yeah.
vaccine and not with COVID, as I did both. One stick is enough. You don't need 2.
Yes, yes.
Let's all get back to a little normality, guys.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Bye-bye.
I'd like to go back now to 120 Oak Ridge Road, which is where Neil and I went out there, I think it was last week. This is the one that is out on Coles Neck, and the end of that lane there, there is a bleeder valve there now. There is no curb stop for that property yet. And this is in the area that it would be the responsibility of the town to install it at our expense because it is adjacent to the transfer station. And it should have gone in many years ago. So we are waiting on, I just want to know, we're waiting on the plan, the design for the house that's to go there, so we know where that curb stop should be going in. Obviously, it has to somehow connect to the line that is right there at on the cul-de-sac. And that once we know where it goes in, then we can arrange to have the curb stop put in.
So Jim, do you need a motion from us?
Yes, the motion would be to install the curb stop at the end of the Oak Ridge Road cul-de-sac.
So moved.
Second.
But does it have any effect on our new line?
No.
Good. I'll just go.
So let's take a vote on that. Kathleen?
Yes.
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 Art,
Yes.
Neil,
Yes,
and I approve it as well. So it's unanimous that we approve the installation of the curb stop on Oak Ridge Road. The next thing we have on here is the SCADA system. And I'm going to ask John if he has any update on it at all.
I do. I spoke with Butch half an hour ago. Boy Scout Station is pretty much done. He's waiting for one cable to paste the chemical pumps against the flow, which should be any day, and he'll put it in, and that will be complete. He's going to go down to Coles Neck Tuesday and pull the panel out of there, and he hopes to rebuild that within a week and have it back in.
Okay.
And he will be finished.
Okay. So we will we will be able to say that the project is completed before June 30th, hopefully.
I would think well before.
Okay. So there's no action then required on that. The next item that's on here is the discussion on the water enterprise budget. And I was going to ask Rebecca if she could put up the year-to-date numbers for us.
Tim, if I'm correct, this is you guys, this part of
Yes.
the meeting.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything else for you folks now, Eric.
All right. With that said, everybody have a good night. Stay healthy. Okay.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
All righty. Take care.
So, can you provide us with the
Yep, hang on one second.
budget information?
That's what you're looking for, yes?
Yes.
You got it.
So that's the four balance, the four
Okay.
column balance. So that the next sheets are the revenue ledger, the expense ledger. this was the prior year. This was 2020. So that we really don't need to talk about this, but I would like to go to the 2021 expenditure and revenue ledgers.
That's just 2 lines, right?
No, it's actually, this is the full. Yes, that's it.
Oh, all of that, okay.
So I'll give you a quick summary on this. I did go over this, and on the, see, looking at the expenditure ledger here, and I did get an updated one today from the town accountant. So I can give you the totals on this now. On the expenditure budget, it is, on the expenditure ledger, the total, the last page on that, of the budget of 283,663, the final page, page 5 on that.
Yeah,
Yes, 283,663.
63.
We now have, with updated expenditures, the debit on that is 159,537, leaving a remainder of 124,125. And what I want to bring your attention to on this, if you right at the top of the, if you go up to the page above that, whitewater contingency, if you notice on this, the summary of the contingency budget shows a negative balance of 13,964. And so I did ask Jane Tesson in the accounting office if she could provide us detail as to why we have that, why there is a deficit at this point. And it's basically 2 things that happen. One is the lightning that happened back in the early, that took out the well, and that was a significant expense there. And then the second thing was with the contamination of the well water in the fall, that resulted in a significant level of expenditures there. So we are currently over from the $25,000 budget by 13,964. So we have overspent on that line. I just wanted you to know how that happened.
Okay,
So it's basically, Jim, we're really like 38,000 over budget. So we've used the 25,000 contingency plus an additional almost 14. So it's really like 39,000 over budget.
Not over budget, but 14,900 over budget.
Including the contingency, which we often don't use, right?
Right. So we have to consider that as we go into next year. I looked at the other lines in this, starting with the staffing budget that's beginning on this. And it's in line with what we had budgeted. So I don't think that that's a problem. Electricity, and I just wanted to, which is the second category in the budget, was we had budgeted 12,000, and to date, showing that we have used $6,900 of that, leaving about 5,000. But it's interesting when I looked at when those expenses came in. Kurt, I think you'll find this interesting.
Jim, what page are you on?
2. Page 2.
Page 2. the expenses seem to be higher in the summer months than they were in the winter months. Now, I don't understand that. So, I know we were talking about that the electricity a bit not being related to the heating, the heaters in the at the water tower.
But as a whole, Jim, we have electricity associated with our pumps, right? This is including everything.
Right. So, I mean, we're not over budget yet.
Yeah.
The only area that we were over budget on was indeed on the Whitewater contingency.
Oh, about telephone too, isn't it?
I don't
Small
think
amount, just a small amount,
right.
couple
And
hundred.
so, my thinking on this is that we should go in with a comparable budget for the coming year. That except, I don't know what we should do with respect to the contingency, unless we just say, well, we're not going to have that same experience next year. But we are facing the cost of installation of the new water meters. And that, if you recall, is around 45,000 over the next each year over the next 3 years. So I would assume that that needs to go into contract services.
Seems it should be in there, but we're going to be doing it for a long time.
Pardon?
I think we should include it because we're going to be doing it for some reason.
Yes, I think we should. Yeah.
Can you repeat that, Jim? I couldn't hear it.
What he's saying, the 45,000 over each year over the next 3 years for the installation of new water meters.
You know, what's in the back of my mind is whether we should be talking to the finance committee about pulling that out as a separate, separate item, since it's not going to be a continuing operating expense. It's really a capital expense.
It is a capital expense, right?
And, just like we wouldn't show the main extension, in our operating budget, I'm wondering if it would make more sense to have it pulled out separately.
Yeah, well, we'll have to.
I know that gets messy in terms of, town meeting, but it might be worth a discussion with them, with, like with finance committee or the TA.
Yeah, well, we're going to have to bring it up with finance as well as the select board.
Yeah. I don't know. What do you think?
I think you're right on that. It can be labeled as a capital expense. Even if we're running it through Whitewater.
I mean, the issue in my mind is it's going to fall off the budget in 4 years.
Right. Well, we could always find some use for that money.
No, I know. And there's a reasonable argument to be made that we might want to have something slightly higher than 25,000 for contingency.
Right. Should we up that then? Are you suggesting we should?
Well, this is sort of goes back to the other question, that whether we should be putting that contingency into a contingency fund, so that when we don't have, when we don't spend it, it's actually available for future, for a future major event. And then maybe, if we can accumulate a certain amount in there, that's like self-insuring, and that's a pretty smart thing given the unpredictability of those type of expenses on the system.
Heather's really good at that stuff. She could probably help you set that like a savings fund up for you.
Yeah. Rebecca, who's still?
Normally this is going back into the, if we don't spend the contingency money, it goes back into the general fund. Right?
Yeah.
So every year we're, go ahead, Tom.
That's a good idea also, because as the system grows, there's going to be more and more issues that are going to have to be dealt with. I think we should include that in enlarging and storing. Enlarging the contingency if we can, and then keeping it as a contingency without taking it out of the budget every year.
Yeah. That's
I mean, in theory, if we had done that with, if we had a contingency fund, if we had been funding it for the last 4 years that were, you know, whatever, some length of time, we'd have money in there that would offset the meters, you know, and that's the type of thing that wasn't, you know, an unforeseen, you know, we expected those meters to go an awful lot longer than they have. There was an issue with the supplier. We're now, you know, kind of forced to put new meters in for a variety of different reasons. And that's, you know, that's sort of one of those big unexpected expenses.
So would it make sense then, say that we want to propose a level budget except for whitewater contingency, we want to increase that from the 25,000 up to say 30 or 35,000?
Seems like a reasonable number.
What do you think, Kurt?
Yeah, I mean, uh, 25, 10%, be 25. Yeah, so through 30,000 is a 10% increase.
Yeah.
Or I'm sorry, 20% increase.
But I think that, you know, it's significant what happened. I just want to point out something on that. I asked for detail on that line, and specifically a couple of things. As I mentioned, the installation of the new well, the new pump, rather, back in the summer. And then the second thing was the problem, the contamination in the well at Cole's Nest. And the expenses associated with that contamination included an invoice from Whitewater for $11,045. That included a lot of testing and labor. And then another one for $5,391 associated with that as well. So all total, it was over $16,000 associated with that experience for the E. coli problem. I do want to go back to Eric on this. I think that there were some issues with the way Whitewater handled this, and I'm wondering whether or not they should be expected to share that cost with us.
I'm going back to the contingency again. You know, if we can get Heather to set that up in a reserve fund, if we were to, I mean, I'm not trying to make work for people, but if we were to figure out, for example, how much the meters cost, how much the new SCADA improvements cost, how much the contamination event cost, how much the leak troubleshooting cost. I'm missing a couple of things, the pump issue, the generator issue. If you lump a bunch of those things together, over, let's just say, the last 5 years. The meters kind of throw it off a bit. Maybe it's over 10 years, but you could take that number, divide by 10, and that's probably what we ought to be budgeting for contingency, something like that.
Yeah.
And what would that be?
Say again, Catherine?
What would that be approximately?
Say again, Kurt, what you,
Well, the things that I was thinking about were the meters, the generator, the SCADA system, the pump, the leaks, and the contamination event.
So should we have something double what we have now or more than that?
I don't know. That's why I was kind of trying to think maybe we should, if we take a look at it, something might pop out at us that makes sense. Whether it's, I wouldn't want to under budget and I wouldn't want to over budget. I think we want to try to get it right, but I don't know. So I don't know whether 25, 30, 35, something like that's probably right, but that might help us make a better decision.
well, just the three of those things, the meters, the replacement of the well pump and the E. coli issue, that comes up to 175,000.
So over 5 years, that would be $35,000.
Right.
So let's do 40.
Well, I think the meters kind of skew it a little bit,
Yeah,
and I think 35 probably based on that does make more sense, Jim.
Sure.
And if we could get the other question is if we're going to approach Heather about putting that money into a fund,
Reserve.
we probably want to have a cap on it. I think there'd need to be a cap so you don't just keep plunking money into it. So you're basically creating a reserve fund when the reserve fund will get fully funded may get fully funded at some point. So you don't want to exceed a certain amount. But there may be stuff in state law with respect to how much you can carry in a reserve fund.
I thought that there was something, recommendation as to what you should be carrying.
Well, USDA has, yes, you're right. USDA, that's another way to look at it. USDA has a number for us that we don't have. Right?
Right.
So what does that mean?
Well, they wanted us to carry a reserve, basically as insurance, in part because they're the lender, but they haven't really enforced it. So we've been kind of skating on that particular issue.
I guess I'm confused between contingency and reserve.
Well, the contingency is what's coming off annually, as a contingency. But the idea would be rather than sending that money back to the general fund, it would go into a reserve account. So it's actually available in the future, and you keep funding it from this contingency line item until it hits a certain level.
But we overspent our contingency, right?
Exactly.
1 year.
1 year.
Next year, if there's no, contamination event, no major equipment failure, blah, blah, blah. I mean, for a lot of years, we haven't spent the contingency funds.
That's something we can look at as what we have. Like if we do, just like a review of what has been spent in the contingency fund over the past 5 years. And so, what the balance would have been.
How much time do we have?
Well, we've got to
How much
get.
time? Go ahead.
I would say we've got to get in front of the finance committee fairly soon. I mean, that was something I wanted to talk to you about, Kurt. Have you met with them yet for wastewater?
I did meet with them a couple of months back, and they wanted to deal with department budgets first. We were actually, water and wastewater were scheduled at that meeting. And given that town meeting's been pushed to June, there's a little less urgency, but we still do have to get in front of them.
Right, okay. All right. So that's perhaps something we should talk about, that because we do need to schedule that with them. They actually wanted to do it last week. And I put it off saying that we had not discussed our budget yet. So what I'm hearing, the recommendation there from you, Kurt, is that we pull the meter issue out, present it to them as a capital expenditure that we're looking to fund over the next 3 years, that it should not be in the operating budget. As far as the operating budget goes, we believe that the contingency, if I can get some numbers together on what has been spent on the Whitewater Contingency Fund over the last 5 years, and then look at that relative to what happened in the current year, as to see whether or not, had we been allowed to keep those reserves, what the impact would have been.
Mm.
We probably wouldn't have to go to town meeting for money for meters.
We may not have to, right? So.
Well, I just think maybe we're getting a little more sophisticated in what we're doing.
So in terms of our going in front of Finance Committee and ultimately the Select Board, I am proposing that we go in with essentially a budget similar to what we had last year, except for the Whitewater contingency line, and raising that by 5,000 from 25 to 30,000.
How about 35?
We can try.
I'll vote yes for 35.
Well, I think we ought to just do, that's a great motion, and then we'll, subject to looking at it, at least we've got a placeholder. And if it looks like it should be something different, we can come back and,
Right.
Good idea.
Room to negotiate with the select board.
say again, Tom?
That'll allow us, room to cut down a little if they feel they have to do something.
Yes. Yeah.
So I say, I would just like approval to go ahead and meet with the Finance Committee on this.
So I think the motion was to approve the budget, subject to increasing the contingency level from 25,000 to 35,000, and investigate setting up a reserve fund with those contingency funds in the future.
Right.
Good, that sounds good. That's well put.
You want to second it then, Catherine?
I certainly will.
Any discussion? Let's take a vote. Tom?
Hey, Tom. I see his head.
Pardon?
We've got a vote.
Some interference. I don't know what it is.
Yes. I think that was a yes.
Okay, good.
Neil?
Yes,
Kurt?
Yes.
Catherine?
Yes,
I agree. Thank you.
all right.
Okay. Got through that. And so, Kurt, maybe after we're finished with this, if we could have a quick discussion about what your plans are with wastewater, and that so we can come up with a date for when we can go in front of the finance.
Sure.
Because
Okay.
I have another issue for you regarding wastewaters.
Okay. Just for the committee's benefit, we haven't finalized anything on wastewater, but what we've been trying to do is a 25-year plan for what a wastewater program would look like from a budget standpoint. And the numbers are pretty mind-blowing, but suffice it to say, it's likely going to look like $2.5 to $3.5 million a year. And one of the implications that has is several people have come to me, including, I don't know where the echo is coming from.
What is that?
Neil has feedback, so I have to mute him.
Great. So what that means is that several people have come to me, including folks from the Housing Partnership and other places in town, and said, that idea that you guys were pushing a while ago to have a water and wastewater, director, we really think it's time. And so I've been hearing a lot of positive feedback around that idea, and I think that would be a big benefit for us. So I wanted to let you know I've heard some of that feedback, that wastewater is going to have to be putting forward a relatively significant budget to meet our watershed requirements in conjunction with an agreement with DEP. We'll be talking more about that and getting, sharing more of the detail. But from a big picture standpoint, that's kind of how it could affect our committee here.
Great. Good idea. So,
The only way that it's letting you pay is if you pay off the entire loan. $2,900.97.
Rebecca,
I don't
you're
know,
not
it doesn't
muted.
Oh, sorry.
oh God, another.
I didn't think it was a waste. I didn't think it was a water commission $2,000 loan.
Okay, so Katri, I know we asked to put this on here, but I have nothing to report yet on the RFP for the water consultant.
That's okay. We've already run an hour and 20 minutes, so that's.
Okay. So we'll leave it on there.
Okay. Well, you said there's a positive mood that you felt.
Yeah. So the next item is
Jim, to move that, actually, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but to move the RFP for, is that just a matter of getting Maria to agree to get out an RFP?
No, well, it's not. I think it's in our hands. It's in Mike's office.
And the new ATA starts April 1st, so she could help you with that too if you needed it.
Okay, because we have to have a chief procurement officer basically involved with that, or a procurement officer.
Yep, and that's what she is.
She has that experience, right?
Yes, she has quite a bit of experience with it.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Okay. So the next item is minutes.
They look okay.
There were 3 meetings.
Thanks,
They're
Catherine.
all okay.
Is that a global motion to approve all 3 meetings?
I don't think we can do that.
I don't think we can either.
It won't fly.
Well, you know what's funny is I think you already approved 2 of them. I just realized it because I did your meeting minutes.
You gave us the cut, whatever.
Yeah.
We already.
So I just think you need March 2nd.
Okay.
Right.
So moved.
Second. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it if nobody else will. Tom's gonna second it, right,
All right.
good.
Catherine,
Yes,
Kurt,
Yes,
Tom,
Yes,
Neil,
He's
We
not
lost
on
him.
anymore.
we lost Neil.
okay, and I agree.
okay.
All right, so next meeting, we do- 2 weeks out would be the
30th of March.
Okay,
I'm gonna do that.
that's fine.
Okay,
I'm out of town. I mean, you can certainly do that as long as you can still get a quorum, but I'm out of town.
oh no, we've gotta have you, Kurt. When you're not on, nobody can come up with phrasing the way you can. You've got the touch, okay.
My problem is if we push it out beyond that, I'm not available the following week. So the 30th would be fine. I can't do it.
Well, how
And
about
I
a
can
different
try
day of the
to,
week? Can we do it a different day of the week?
for me,
Is
it's a
that too
timing thing. I'm
complicated?
gonna be out, I'm out west. So if the meeting,
Oh,
if the
okay.
meeting was at 6, then I could dial in at 4. That would be okay.
Let's do that.
That's fine.
okay,
So the 6 o'clock on the
30th.
30th. Okay,
Well, thanks for all your extra work that you guys are doing. Meeting
Yeah.
with people and having your testing the water and so forth.
yeah. Okay. Do I hear him to adjourn then?
I say Neil's back on, maybe he'll move to adjourn.
He just has a lot of feedback. So when I have to mute him with all the feedback, but I think he thinks he gets disconnected and he's not disconnected.
I'm at my wit's end on this Zoom call.
Yeah.
So
Well, we're
you can move to
we're gonna
adjourn,
end it.
Neil.
We're gonna end it.
I can't remain connected.
Good time to move to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All
Okay.
in favor?
Catherine, yes. Tom?
Yes.
Okay. Neil, yes. Kurt, yes. And I'm yes.
Everybody, yes.
Okay.
Excellent.
All right.
Thank you, Jim, for all your hard work.
Can I
Yeah.
call you right now, Kurt, for a moment?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Thank you, folks.
Okay,
Bye,
thanks,
everyone.
Rebecca. Thank
You're
you. Thank you.
welcome. Bye.